when you came into this world, you were exactly right. Oh, how I wish for each of us we had an experience when we entered this world. We were met with, look at you. Look at you, you beautiful, perfect being. There is nowhere else in the world than I want to be right now than here with you. And just because you are in this family and just because you came from my body or my DNA, it does not mean that you are an extension of me. And I don't want to make you into what I want you to be. I want to know you. Show me who you are. Oh, more of you. Yeah, you're different from me. That's perfect. Be different from me. Thank goodness you're different from me. More you. Yes, you. Oh, you get angry? Yes, that's healthy and right. Oh, you don't like when I do that thing? Thank you for telling me. Oh, you love that thing? Amazing. You know, I know you might be saying like, oh my God, Sarah, nobody has an experience like that. You were supposed to, you know. I was supposed to too. And when you have that kind of experience where your truth is validated and honored and your beingness is validated and celebrated and honored, you don't question who you are. You also don't question what your truth is because your truth is always met with yes. Yes, that's your truth. If you ask a child who has not had their truth taken away from them, if I ask a child, who's your best friend? And they say, Mark. I wouldn't say, well, how do you know it's Mark? Did you ask 5 people? Did you talk to a therapist about that? Did you look it up on ChatGPT? How do you know? And the kid would just be like, she would just say, It's Mark. You ask the kid, like, do you want to go to the pool or do you want to climb the tree? Pool. Well, how do you know that? Did you research it? Is it because you just feel like your joints are a little tight and it'd probably be better for you to be in the pool and not the tree? They would just look at me so confused, bewildered. Like, what's your problem? Why don't you know your truth? They know like they know like they know. Where does truth come from? Your embodied experience. And when you have consistent lived experiences where you felt your truth in your body, you expressed it, and it was met with yes. When that occurs, you are much more anchored in truth in your adult life. The sequoia tree that's growing doesn't say to itself like, holy shit, what if I become a seal? Oh my God, am I a seal? It doesn't like look at somebody else and say another tree and say, I think I'm a seal. That would be so ridiculous, right? And I'm giving you a ridiculous example, but this is what we do to ourselves. We question so deeply who we are. And the moment we might be anchored in knowing who we are, all it takes is somebody saying, are you sure? No, I think the relationship is terrible for you. You know what they might be doing? They might be projecting their own experience onto you. And if I'm not anchored in me, do you know what's going to happen in that moment? A part is going to show up. The part that lives in confusion or questions their own reality or has to take on someone else's reality. And now I'm very confused. I thought this was my truth, and now I'm in this other truth. And again, that's the oscillation between and through our parts, but by you. Show those younger parts that this is different now, that someone being kind to you isn't grooming you. They just want to make you happy. I had no experience of that in my whole life. So this is what I'm saying about how a really safe relationship can feel really dangerous. You have to build your capacity for it. What I want you to do is get clued into who those parts are. And then the second important thing is, when anchored in adult you, what is actually true? By the way, you'll know you're in true you if there are things about the person you're with, you're like, I don't love that. That thing I need them to work on for sure. If this is going to be long-term, that I have to have them work on. These other things really annoy me, but I guess I can learn to live with them. I know that might sound, you might be like, isn't that a really adult you? Yeah, it is. And I love these other things. It's an infatuation part of you if you think, this person is just incredible and there's nothing about them that annoys me or irritates me or that I just wish would be slightly different. Or there's nothing that I have, that is absolutely needs to shift. That's a clue it's not adult you. So when you do this, you become empowered. And then I'm in the driver's seat of my life.
My question is surrounding the concept of resentment. I have ended a 34-year marriage with betrayal being a part of that. And I find myself extremely resentful of my partner, ex-partner. And I'm not quite sure where that fits in with my nervous system. I know I do feel more resentment when I'm dysregulated, but I'm wondering what your take is on resentment and if you have any suggestions or opinions or facts to help me through getting through resentment. I really do not like feeling the resentment, and I would like to pretty much remove it from my life if possible. So thank you for any insight you can provide. And
we talked about this in previous episodes, are by allowing our body to make sound that exemplifies the feeling and sensations in our bodies. We can squeeze something, squeeze something really hard as we make a sound. You can break something, whether that's like breaking a stick, or even if you have like a backyard and you've got some old plates, like breaking a plate. So allowing my system to take that energy that's inside and move it outside of myself. You can also have your healthy aggression write. So picking up a pen and doing some stream of consciousness writing, letting that appropriate healthy aggression come out. If you're working with a somatic practitioner or clinician, they're going to help guide your system into experiencing and expressing that healthy aggression in session. The more that we do this, and we are able to finally express the appropriate response to what occurred. And by the way, in this situation, it's probably not going to be about just that one betrayal. There are probably, many moments of betrayal that happened before that, or many moments of having unmet needs that transpired before that. The more that we do this, the more that our system says, okay, I did the thing I needed to do, and now that's marked as complete. And the thing that occurred in the past can actually be in the past. If we find ourselves ruminating or not being able to move beyond something, it's a clue that my system has not been able to have the appropriate response it wanted to have, because it wasn't safe, because I historically have internalized things, and it won't let us off the hook, meaning it won't let us just move on. It's saying, now you got to get this need met. You have to protect yourself in this way. You have to express yourself in this way. And then when that occurs, we are actually able to let the past be the past, and we're able to energetically disconnect or end that cord of connection with them. So let's move on to the last question we have today.
I was wondering how you found it in yourself to forgive the people that had abused you. And kind of like, for me, it's like a problem of forgiving myself more than the people, I think, because I'm 28 years old, and around 21, I went through a lot of abuse. And since then, I really haven't been able to do anything. Like, nothing feels safe, but sort of like you described, like a beautiful, like, little prison you make for yourself. Like, I can only go for walks really close to home around my block. I can only see like the people that I have seen. I don't feel comfortable like meeting new people. I don't feel comfortable doing the things that I really desire to do. I could not travel. Like, everything's just like, everything feels like too much. So I feel like I just lost, most all of the best years of my life, or that's what the story is in my mind. That I wonder how you were able to move beyond.
I'm so sorry to hear about your experience. So much of it I can relate to, as I am approaching being 40, and I remember saying what you're saying right now in your late 20s. I can promise you that I know this is like, oh my gosh, such a corny thing to say, but there's so many amazing years to come. You have not lost your best years, for sure. And the more that we heal, they just keep getting better and better. That's really what's true. So a couple things I want to address here. Forgiveness can only happen when we have accessed the appropriate healthy aggression to what occurred. And that means the appropriate experience of protecting and defending ourselves that was inhibited at the time of the trauma we experienced, or the traumas if they were consistently happening to us. And we have to build our capacity to hold that energy. As I've said before, the healthy aggression, is going to be bigger based on the level of trauma that we experienced. And in my own experience, when it came to my childhood trauma, it sounds like you've heard me talk about it before. That was pretty extensive trauma, pretty violent trauma. So my level of healthy aggression that I needed to access to process that was really high. So for me, that meant allowing my system to go back to the state-dependent memory, so meaning the feeling within my nervous system of what occurred at that time, and defend myself in a way that I wasn't able to. And so because of the pretty violent nature of what happened to me, that meant some pretty big energy of self-protection needed to be present. And in my own somatic work, that looked like my body feeling into this really intense self-protective energy and rage, and my body, it felt like my body was actually trying to kill this person that was hurting me in such an intense way. Obviously, I wasn't doing that in real life. This is inside of a therapeutic container, and it's just my system engaging in the energetic act of self-protection. And again, it will always match what occurred. That is what is also necessary to remediate shame. So shame is the internalization of what happened to us. And I heard you say, I blame myself, which is an experience of shame. You've internalized it. So you cannot talk your way out of that. There's no way that you could rationalize to yourself why it wasn't your fault. You can try, but I can tell you it won't work. I tell you that from personal experience too, and that's what somatic work and trauma work tells us. When I can access the appropriate healthy aggression to what transpired, it's taking what's internalized and getting it out of myself and giving it back to the place that it rightfully belongs. So this is not, what happened to me does not make me bad. That person was bad. What happened to me was bad. So accessing that appropriate healthy aggression helps us come out of collapse where shame lives. Then shame truly begins to dissipate from our experience and not be a part of our story or our somatic experience in our bodies. And then lastly, I want to say, you never have to forgive. I have not forgiven the people that harmed me to such horrific degrees. I didn't want to be on this planet because of them. I had to spend decades trapped in this hellish place inside of myself because of them. Now, what I have done is disconnected energetically from that experience and from them. So that's a form of forgiveness, but it's not in the way that we might think about it. Like, I forgive you for what you did. I actually don't forgive them for what they did. There's no excuse for it. It doesn't matter that they did that because they experienced trauma in their own lives. That's why we all do things that we do, because we experience trauma in our own lives. And I have not certainly done the kinds of things that they did. And I was traumatized in pretty terrible ways. So what I'm really saying is the type of forgiveness I'm talking about is I am letting go of this past because it's finally in the past, and you have no power over me, and there is no energetic connection. So that's a form of forgiveness. That might be something that you end up landing in, or it could be that if the person or people who harmed you are really loving people who did their best but they got things wrong. That's a really different type of forgiveness. And with that person, I might want to still be in a relationship with them. So I do forgive them. They were doing their very, very best, and they didn't mean to harm me. So very different scenarios. Lastly, I just want to say the small life that you're living currently is simply because your nervous system does not yet know that what happened when you were 21 is over. And the more that we reshape our nervous systems, we show, not tell our nervous systems, we are here in this moment, and this moment is safe to be in. The more that we address the younger part, that 21-year-old part, who was trapped in that experience, and we come to her aid and we give her the things that she never got, and listen to some of the episodes on Parts Work to do that, the more she finally gets what she never got. And when we have that kind of internal protection and safety, when we finally are able to show our nervous systems the past is the past, we become free. And that is possible for you, and that is possible for each of us.
There are people who want us to be ourselves. They don't want us to acquiesce to them and become, a puppet for them. They want us to be us. But our parts don't know that. So we take this Truman Show we grew up in, or this blueprint, and then we find ourselves doing the very same thing in our adult lives. That's called a rigid boundary. So I think of this like a steel wall, and meaning nothing is going to come towards me. And also this means I can't go towards anything at the same time. So a rigid boundary is the result of having experiences in the past where, and usually again stemming in childhood, where people were either unavailable or dangerous to us. And so our system said, well, if people are going to be dangerous, I don't want to take any risks. When I let people close, if they harmed me or hurt me consistently, then I don't want to allow for that to happen. So we'll find ourselves in our adult lives having these more rigid boundaries, which means we're going to have a reflexive no response. So even though we really might desperately or deeply want something to come close to us, our nervous system and our parts are going to say, no, that's not safe. So for me, connection was something that was certainly not safe for me as a kid. And in my adult life, of course, those parts were saying, I don't think connection is safe still. And the crux of that is connection is a primary human need. So I deeply longed for really, beautiful interpersonal relationships. And yet my nervous system and my parts were saying that's not safe. So here's what that would look like for me. Someone might ask me, like a new friend or something, might say, hey, do you want to go to this event with me that's happening 2 weeks from now? And I would say, yeah, I'd love to do that. And in that moment, I was able to access my truth because it wasn't happening in immediacy. And guess what would occur? The week that event was happening, all of a sudden I would feel this resistance or dread. And then the day of the event, my nervous system and my protective parts would want to cancel. And before gone from not being able to actually lean into their relationship and say yes to it, to literally, this actually happened to a client of mine. I reached out to her about another sharing more about her experience in the programs because she previously had. And then she said we could share this, but publicly shared that she was not only able to fully lean into her relationship, but was able to actually have a child, which is the thing she always wanted. But that's the result of what happens when we bring regulation to our nervous system. And we do that one neural exercise at a time. So before I go to the process of what I want you to do and what to expect as you're doing these neural exercises, is I just want to talk about the difference between what a regulating resource is and what a coping strategy is. Now, a regulating resource, those are the things we're going to do when we're doing a neural exercise or like the rep at the gym. A regulating resource is anything that actually gets rid of or what's called discharges the activation in our body. So it actually makes us feel different when we do it. A coping strategy is anything that covers up the dysregulation. So I've given this visual before, but imagine I'm making a fist right now. So make a fist and imagine that that's all the dysregulation or activation in your body. A coping strategy is anything that covers it up. So take the other hand and cover up your fist like a blanket. It numbs you or disconnects you from the activation and does not need to be loud. That's really important to remember. If you are deeply, deeply rooted in your power and your truth, it is unwavering like a great oak tree. The great oak tree knows like it knows that that's its space. So somebody could dance around it and have a tantrum around it and say, you must move because this is my space. And the oak tree would just look at it curiously and say, oh, I'm sorry, you'll have to go around. You can get upset, I suppose, but I'm not moving because this is my space. I was planted here and you'll have to go around. And there's a lot of power in that. And the greatest power is anchored like that. And when we are actually rooted in what our truth is and we know, that's the way we navigate the world. And people can sense the great oak tree within us, all subconscious. They don't really have a full understanding usually of what's going on, but they know that we're unmovable. And so they don't try to push us as much because they know that's going to be an exhausting process. It's like someone trying to push against an oak tree. You'd look at them and be like, wow, you're wasting a lot of energy. I don't know. If I were you, I'd probably stop pushing against that oak tree thinking it's going to move. It's not going to move. I'm more proud of. There's nothing harder I have ever done in my life than this work. And I don't care what happens in my life in terms of external accolades or anything like that. It's the thing I will forever be the most proud of. It's the hardest thing that I've ever done.
And all of the yummy things we want today. And it's also how you resolve the past, is that I have the capacity to hold greater stress in my nervous system so that when current life stuff happens, I don't get overwhelmed by it. I can navigate it. And I can also go back to this energy that's in my body that's been waiting for me to resolve it. And then bit by bit, in what's called a titrated way, we chip away at feeling that energy in our body and discharging it out. So imagine that you have this giant jug of water, like a gallon jug. It's all the traumatic energy stored in your body, and it has a spigot at the bottom. Our job is we turn the spigot, take a little bit of the water out, feel it in our bodies. That's the somatic experience of it. And then we teach our body how to do what it innately knows how to do, which is get rid of it. And that's called pendulation. So I feel it, I get rid of it. My dog Truman, I talk about this a lot, but the one thing that scares him the most is a bath. He thinks he's going to die from water. It's like lava. And as soon as he gets a bath, he goes into dysregulation, freeze, and right after, I put him on the ground and he sprints around, shakes. He's discharging the energy. So he felt that traumatic energy in his body and then he gets rid of it, or the overwhelming energy. And that's what we're teaching our nervous system to do. So as we heal, your psyche and your parts are watching. And you build capacity as that warrior, and then your psyche and your parts say, okay, I think you might be ready to handle this now so we don't have to be stuck with this perpetual pain. And now you're feeling the somatic stuff from the past, or you're remembering something. And it can feel like we're going backwards, but this isn't backwards, this is forwards. The only way out is through. In somatic experiencing, this is referred to as energy wells. So think of that like a bowl, okay, like bowls inside of bowls. You know those bowls you use to bake with? There's like a tiny one, and then let's say there's like 10 more until they get to the big one, and they can all be stacked together. So before we begin our healing journey, we might have like a thimble-size bowl, very small, and that means I can't hold a lot of activation because I haven't done the work to regulate my nervous system. But the more you do the work, your psyche and your parts realize that, and they're like, oh, we can move beyond a thimble. Let's have a half a cup-size bowl. And now all of a sudden, more energy is there, traumatic energy, and more memories are there, and like, wow, I'm feeling anger all of a sudden. Those are called energy wells. So then you address that energy well by, again, feeling into that, discharging the energy, feeling into the appropriate response that wasn't able to be expressed. And then usually we cruise along for a little while. You gain a little more capacity, and your psyche and your parts get wind of it, and they're like, let's go to the next bowl. And all of a sudden, it's like this giant fruit bowl. And you're like, what the hell? I don't want a fruit bowl. I mean, and by the way, I do this professionally, and anytime I've gone to a bigger energy well, I'm just like, oh my God, I don't want to do this. I want to normalize that. And even
adapted through distance. He realized that staying too close to the family's dysfunction came at the cost of his peace and genuineness. I suspect Robert learned to protect himself by stepping back and withdrawing. Robert seemed naturally sensitive and emotionally aware. He seemed like someone who thought deeply, noticed feelings, and cared about others. In a healthy home, these traits can become important strengths. When a child's emotions are accepted, they learn that it's safe to express themselves, that empathy connects them to others, and that reflection helps to keep them balanced. But in a controlling or emotionally unpredictable home, these same traits can feel dangerous. A sensitive child quickly learns that showing emotion might lead to conflict instead of comfort. So instead of using empathy to connect, they use it to predict, constantly reading everyone's moods to stay safe. In this kind of environment, emotional intelligence can turn into what? Hypervigilance, which is always being on alert. Empathy can turn into people-pleasing, and reflection can turn into overthinking and trying to stay one step ahead of harm. These traits that were meant to help a child build relationships become tools for survival instead. That is likely what happened to Robert. The sensitivity, emotional depth, and empathy that could have made him open and trusting instead became his armor. His nature gave him awareness. His environment taught him how to use it. And in the end, he used that awareness to protect himself by walking away. It seems in his younger years, Robert complied. He dated a woman his parents did not approve of, and under pressure, he walked away from her. He traded himself for his family's acceptance. He later married someone who fit the family mold, the quote-unquote right kind of woman by his family's standards. On the outside, it looked stable, but on the inside, it probably felt very empty. Years later, when Robert reconnected with the woman he truly loved, I can imagine that something powerful happened. It was not just a rekindled romance. It may have been the moment he reclaimed the part of himself he had once given up to please others. This may have been the moment when Robert stopped living by someone else's expectation, this self-reclamation. The process of reclaiming your authentic self. This is the instant a person decides to stop living for other people's approval and begin to live in alignment with their own truth. It's the process of uncovering the parts of yourself that were buried underneath years of fear, people-pleasing, or unmet expectations. It marks a shift from chasing external validation to creating inner fulfillment, not by being who others need you to be, but by finally becoming who you truly are.
So what does this look like? Well, it looks like when you do this work of discharging that energy, going from feeling shame all the time to I don't feel shame anymore. Feeling anxious all the time to, yeah, I have anxiety sometimes, but the majority of that has really resolved.
Getting circular movements with our joints. So just even subtle rotations of the wrists, followed by the shoulders. When we get into these circular movements, what happens is our brain registers this as continuous movement, as opposed to normally we move in more linear fashions, but that often results in pushing against something. And if we don't have the resources to meet that demand, that's when we feel stuck, we feel frozen, we feel like we've met a dead end. So by moving our body in circular patterns, the brain starts to register this message that actually we're not stuck, we're not frozen, there's always places to go, and we can actually start to imbue this sense of motion, which translates into a psychological, neurological, and even emotional sense of flow and release. And the final one is to actually get into a flow state. And this is something that we can do by focusing our attention to where our hands go, and especially doing things that work with our hands, whether it's writing by hand or some art project, painting, knitting, creating something. All of these things help us to get us out of our mind and into our senses, right?
So take an easy full breath. And on the exhalation, make the sound voo, coming from the belly, as though it's coming from the belly, but really is coming from the belly. And let the sound and the breath go all the way out, and then just wait for the breath to come in, filling belly and chest, and then repeat. So I'll demonstrate here. And I let the breath and the sound go all the way out. And then wait for the breath to come in, filling belly and then chest. And once more. Neurons in the whole gastrointestinal system. And there are these different receptors that are signaling from our guts back up to our brain what's happening and how to be able to change that. So again, the idea is very simple, and also different kinds of sounding techniques have been used literally for thousands of years.
And so what you can begin to do instead is subtle breath, subtle movement, subtle commands from the mind to the body, whispering to the body instead of telling it what to do. Stop being in pain, push past the pain, whisper, you're safe, I trust you, you can trust me, I know what I'm doing, I'm in command here, I'm in control. This lets the body, you, the fascia, release.
Therapy that gets you out of it. It's somatic movements like shown here. Hug yourself and squeeze your arms in a bilateral motion.
First thing in the morning, trying to get in natural light really does help. So really helps regulate your circadian rhythm, helps regulate your nervous system. I personally at home have a red light device. So what I try to do is, I'm not somebody who can meditate for a long time. I'll just be really honest. But I do try to do 10 to 15 minutes in front of my red light. Just sit there, even if it's just deep breaths and it's kind of belly breathing and you're moving the air around and just kind of grounding yourself. And your mind is so powerful. So when you tell yourself first thing in the morning, I've got this, I've got my day, I feel grounded, I feel sure of myself, I'm centered, it creates a really good feedback loop to your nervous system. So that's the second tip I would definitely give. Things like breath work for a lot of people. I haven't done long periods of breath work. My husband loves it.
To drink a cold glass of water or splash cold water on my face. The coldness of the water will then contract the musculature in your face and your throat, thus activating vagus nerve and calming your nervous system. The second technique is grounding yourself. Sit or lay down, maybe even go into nature if you can, and notice all the areas of your body in contact with the surface you're sitting on. Number 3 is self-compression. Wrap yourself up in a blanket, cuddle with your pet, anything that helps you feel very safe and comforted in those moments you're experiencing your symptoms. Gently tap back and forth on your chest. This is called a butterfly hug. You're going to do this for 1 to 3 minutes anytime you feel overstimulated and anxious. Use this point in your ear to help restore your vagus nerve. You're going to close your eyes with the thumb and put your fingers in your ear, okay? And then you are going to breathe in a deep breath, and then you're going to hum your exhale, hum your breath out, okay? Let's do it together. Maybe this would help, but there was always this focus on I needed to do the right things in the right way. There was pressure, there was urgency, there was resistance. That same thing applies to breath work, to journaling. I wasn't using them as a support to myself. I was using them like a fire extinguisher to just like get rid of this problem, always playing whack-a-mole instead of getting to the root of why I was experiencing what I was experiencing. Your body is never going to regulate because you chose the right tool. It will only regulate once it starts to feel safe. So my healing didn't start until I stopped doing 17 things a day and chose instead to just do one thing at a time with presence, slowly. And the last thing is you may still just be in fix-it mode. And if you're in fix-it mode, that is assuming that you are viewing yourself and your problems and your symptoms and your sensations as problems. My entire recovery era of 20 years was me trying to fight anxiety with more anxiety, trying to fight anxiety with more desire to control. My hypervigilant state of doing all the things perfectly actually looked a lot like self-care, and it wasn't self-care. It was hypervigilance disguised as self-care. Reminder that your nervous system feels that pressure, and it has so little to do with the what you're doing, and it has so much more to do with why are you doing it? What energy are you doing it from? Do you have an acceptance of where you're at? Have you made peace with the fact that you are in this situation? Or is everything you're doing coming from this place of, I must escape this. I can't handle this. I need to make it go away. Because if that is the state that you have been taking action from, I can guarantee you nothing is going to work. Nothing changes until you change the way you approach all of this. Because most of what you're doing is signaling danger. And danger keeps an already sensitized nervous system on high alert. What finally helped me regulate is when I stopped trying to regulate and I started just letting myself be a human who was having a hard time sometimes. It happened when I stopped running from the pain, running from the anxiety, running from the symptoms. And instead, I just said, okay, this is where we're at today. This is what we have to work with. It shouldn't be any different than it is right now. I slowed down. I stopped checking data. I got rid of my Oura Ring. I got a brick device that would lock up my social media so I wasn't unintentionally overstimulating myself. And I stopped trying to predict the future. I stopped trying to guess how this was going to look in a year, in 5 years, in 10 years. And I let myself watch YouTube and bake sourdough and get outside and enjoy my life again. And sometimes I would go on walks and I would cry. I just let it unfold naturally. I stopped forcing. I stopped pushing. I stopped controlling. And I started letting my life unfold. And I started listening to what were the needs that I actually had. Because one of the things that got me into this mess was overriding the messages and the information that my body and my nervous system had been giving me for years. So sometimes you have to let yourself be the version of you that is struggling. And you need to stop making her wrong. You need to stop shaming her for that. You're doing the best that you can. And what I love about what I learned in my healing process is that a lot of the time you need to do less. A lot of the time you need to work easier, not harder. And slowly your body will do what it was designed to do. It will recalibrate when it finally feels safe. So if nothing you're doing is working, that does not mean that you're never going to heal. I promise you. And I know that about 5 signs of nervous system healing that don't actually feel or look like healing. These are 5 signs that you're actually on the perfect path, even if it doesn't feel like it yet. When you start healing your nervous system, it is not going to look the way you expect it to look. The way you would want to judge your nervous system healing is based off of, am I feeling better? Is my life getting from survival energy to real energy. So we don't want to be running on all those stress hormones all the time. And sometimes it can feel like you're having a bit of a crash, but you're just making the transition from I'm not living anymore on the chemicals of stress to fuel my day and to fuel my life. So please know that rest, boredom, and stillness are going to precede your healing. But if you're feeling those on a more regular basis, that is a sign that you are healing. So notice if you've stopped chasing that dopamine-driven, cortisol-driven high, and you start craving a bit more peace, a bit more stillness, and a bit more rest. The third one is similar in the sense that you just start craving more alone time. You realize that being alone and having that solitude feels more life-giving to you rather than an avoidance of your life. You start to notice the way your nervous system is reacting when you are out and about. This was something huge for me. I went on a trip to Minnesota. I went to the Mall of America. I did all of these things that had lots of bright lights and lots of stimulation, and my body reacted so extremely to all that stimulation that I got really good at noticing how I needed to downshift. I needed time alone. I needed quiet time. I needed peace. That was restorative to me when I pushed my nervous system too hard. I have found this process of healing to be so self-trust building. It's another deeper way that we begin listening to our body and saying, hey, I see I've pushed you a little bit too hard. I'm going to take some time alone. It required me to use my voice. It required me to tell my family, hey, I need a break. I need some quiet time. I love you so much, but I need to go into my room for a little bit. I began craving that time in balance with exertion within my life. I didn't stop living my life, but I needed to do both. Instead of being constantly hustling and moving, I needed to start implementing some slowness changing. This can look very hectic and scary from the outside, but it's actually a good sign that things are changing. Your sleep can become inconsistent. You might need naps. You might wake up at 3 a.m. You might have a hard time falling asleep. And you may take this as a sign that something is going in the wrong direction, but that is a sign of It's very important is you start noticing instead of jumping into fixing. You notice that you're giving yourself more space. You notice that you are placing a pause before your reaction. And that pause is creating the ability for you to respond. Responding is a choice. Reacting is a default pattern. You start noticing the sensations you're having and you don't get hooked into them. You don't get locked into focusing on them and fixing them and making them go away. You get cozy with your symptoms and your sensations. You bring them along for the ride. This is one of them. You are safe. You can do this anytime you notice that you're reaching for your phone or you're starting to scan and you're beginning to pick apart something that is fine. Your body needs proof given to it that calm does not mean impending danger. Number 2 is that you overplan instead of ever getting started. And when you don't feel safe to fail, you will plan forever. But it's actually just avoidance. You will
system gets overwhelmed, it'll activate a freeze response, frozen like a deer in headlights, muscle tone right there, ready to go. Your nervous system will do this when it doesn't feel safe. If you stay stuck, not feeling safe for long enough, the freeze will turn into a collapse. If you're more on the depressed side, you're probably more collapsed. If you're more on the anxious side, you're probably more frozen. The energy's stuck right there, ready to go. To deactivate a freeze response, you have 2 main options. The first is to get that body moving. Especially moving your joints helps tell your consciousness to come back into your body and deactivate the freeze. Second is to speak the language of your nervous system and tell your body, tell your nervous system that's actually safe now. That really simply by noticing cues or signals of safety to your body and then noticing what those signals of safety feel like inside. That can be a protective presence. That could be even just noticing your environment, the present moment situation, really letting your attention go wherever it wants, noticing, oh, there's no tiger in the room, there's no threat here, and then feeling the deactivation that comes after that. That's